Thank you for inviting me to this event. This is first time to be on FIAR, and congratulations on 25th FIAR. So congratulations to Xprim, to the sponsor, and all the people that help this to sustain in, and so we can participate to this event. So I'm coming from Macedonia, from university, so I'm coming from academia. So I'm minority here, so it's better to be minority from academia than from supervisory authorities here in front of this audience. So I'm not that afraid right now, but if I was in supervisory authorities, I would be more afraid to speak here. So the aim of my presentation is to give overview what happened before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID in whole Eastern Europe, as the data allows me. Happily, we have the data from Xprim, so I was able to calculate some statistics, much robust statistics, to see what's going on really on these markets and what are the tendencies for the future. In the end, I have some my own estimations, what I expect in the future to happen in Eastern Europe, especially in life and non-life business. So this is the agenda. Initially, I would like to present how I performed the analysis, so how I structured my analysis. So I divided the countries in 5 groups. One group is the North. So I take 2 criteria. One criteria is whether the country belongs to the European Union or not. And the second criteria is whether it is on the North, on the Central, or on the South. So I have 5 groups: the North, Eastern Europe. This is Central Eastern Europe not belonging to EU. The red ones are Central Eastern Europe belonging to EU. This is the Western Balkans, Southeastern Europe not belonging to EU, and Southeastern Europe, the yellow ones, belonging to EU. So this is my own estimation, because I think it's crucial whether the country belongs to EU or not and what the tendencies they have. I divided 3 sub-periods. So I calculate the pre-COVID averages during 2017 to 2019, what happens during COVID, and this is the post-COVID. I took just 2 years because 2023, the data was not available for all countries. So to be as consistent as possible, I needed to keep till 2022. But in some slides, I will have information for 2023. So this is the first indicator that I calculated. This is non-life premiums per capita, abstracting from inflation movements and population dynamics. So this is much robust measure. And the second indicator is down here. This is insurance penetration, typical insurance penetration, non-life. So what we can observe is we can observe these dots, what happened. We have 3 periods: pre-pandemic, COVID, and post-pandemic. We can see that the South, as you go on the South, is better, the market is better. So it's reviving after COVID in much robust way. On the other side, the North, so these countries, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, are still struggling in the non-life business. So their revival it's sluggish after COVID-19. If we see the insurance penetration, we can see during COVID, the central bar, that there are some bumps. That means that insurance sector was more resilient compared to their economies. So it didn't went down as much as their economies. But again, if you see the North, where we observe decreasing tendency in the non-life business, in the non-life penetration. On the South, the indicators are fairly stable. So the non-life business, it's keeping its numbers. If we look much deeper, that was on regional level, this is more on country level. So the same indicators, this is on country level. What we can observe in general, some positive dynamics for Croatia. So Croatia is keeping up after the COVID. It has higher growth rates in insurance density. The North, as I said, Estonia and Latvia still struggling to revive their non-life section. If we see the group Southeastern Europe, EU, where Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania, we can observe that in post-pandemic, Romania has very positive tendencies in terms of inflation-adjusted non-life premium per capita. In the end is the Western Balkans, Southeastern Europe, non-EU. They have some positive dynamics, but they are not growing as much as their economy. So they are growing, but the economy is growing faster. So that means maybe there is a space for insurance sector to grow even more in those countries, in the Western Balkans. If we look at the life, we already mentioned during the panel discussion that the life is not, the situation is gloomy. So as you go on the south, the picture looks better. So we observe positive inflation-adjusted rates, real rates. But if we look at the Central Eastern Europe, the first block, we see negative rates even post-pandemic, inflation-adjusted. That means the inflation is stronger in those countries, and the insurance premium, life insurance premium, cannot keep up with the inflation. So that's why we observe negative rates. So we can see only impressive growth in Southeastern Europe EU group, as I said, Bulgaria, that is led mainly by Bulgaria and Greece, those rates. Okay, this is on country level, the same indicators. So as we can see, the conclusion is pretty much the same, but we can see in much details which countries are struggling. So Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, they are still in negative territory in the post-pandemic period in terms of life. The North, as I said, in the Southeastern Europe, Greece and Bulgaria have significant positive tendencies in the life business. And despite the positive tendencies in the Southeastern Europe, still not significant changes in terms of insurance penetration. As I said, the economy is growing, life insurance is growing, but not as much at the rate that we are expecting. So we are expecting more. If we look at the market portfolio, I took longer distance because market portfolio is not changing very much. So we need to see at longer perspective. So I took 2013, 2018, and 2023. What happens? What we can observe generally is that the MTPL still dominates the South. So this red space here is obvious, is MTPL and generally Southeastern non-EU countries. Still they're in the mandatory, they're selling mandatory MTPL. The share of life business, if we look here, is decreasing. The importance of the life insurance in Central Eastern Europe is decreasing. Here, I want to mention also during the panel, there should be tax incentives to revive the life insurance. And the second important dynamic is that inflation goes down, but the interest rates are now at comfortable level. Now life insurers have position to create more competitive life insurance products. So what I am expecting in the future that life insurance should grow at faster rate because now the environment is different than the one during COVID. And in the end is another conclusion that was mentioned during the panel is that health insurance adds spikes after COVID-19. And as you go on the south, this is blue, these small blue bars, shows that health insurance is growing. So I could speak about the Western Balkans. This is one tendency that happens over there is because health insurance also helping in reducing informal economy. How it goes? It goes, big companies are able to buy health insurance for their workers because there is a lack of labor in those markets. In order to attract more from the informal sector, now the big companies offer health insurance, private health insurance. So in that way, now it's open space for the insurers where there is a huge informal economy to buy health insurance. The claims. Here I calculated the average claims per insurer to see, this is nominal rates. What I want to see, how much inflation impacted each country. So if we observe, of course, because of the inflation, we observe huge spikes in the post-pandemic claims paid. But there are some dynamics. For example, the lowest spikes are for Romania and Slovenia. So if we see here, they are lower compared to the other countries. You will see that Romanian insurers, in terms of claims paid, were less affected compared to other countries. But on the other side, Croatia, Lithuania, and Ukraine are among the highest. So if we see the non-life, the red one is the non-life, we can see that Croatia, Ukraine, and Lithuania had the highest hit by the rise of the claims paid. If we look at the life business, the yellow ones, actually over there the spikes are even higher in the post-pandemic period. So this takes into account also the changes, the entrance and exit of other insurers in the business. I calculated the claim to premium ratio to see whether there is a increase in the loss ratio, like approximation, because I didn't have data for all countries. What we can observe that there is increasing tendencies in the Central Eastern European markets, while decreasing tendencies in Southeastern European markets. So the loss ratio in the Central Eastern Europe is growing, right? In the South is decreasing. One potential explanation might be that there is some efficiency losses during COVID-19. So now the insurers are trying to decrease their loss ratios. So that's why we observe some decreasing tendency in the South. In the non-life, significant lower post-pandemic ratio for Bulgaria and Romania. So the loss ratios are decreasing. But if you look at the life, as I said, we see that the claim to gross written premium ratio is over 100% for Croatia and Estonia, which may affect their profitability. If we look at the MTPL, this graph is actually two snapshots, 2013 and 2023. The main thing is not the variation in the map, but the span. What we can observe that in the past, the span was higher. So the ratio was higher, the loss ratio was higher. But if we look 2023, we see that the span is lower, the range. So now the loss ratios converge to some lower level. What we can observe, some favorable ratios, so improvement, some lower ratio for Albania, Hungary, Moldova, and Romania, but worse ratio for Croatia. So in the past it was 36%, now it's 52%. Okay, another point I wanted to make, whether there is some post-COVID period. What we expect is because the smaller companies struggling during crisis. What we can observe is whether there are some mergers and acquisitions, more higher market concentration in the post-COVID period. What we can observe, not much changes. Some drastic changes, as I heard also Romania, some mergers and acquisitions happens. So that's why we observe in Romania some increase in the concentration. So the top three insurers now hold 61% of the market. Previously, they had below 50%. So that is increase in the market concentration. So Romanian markets probably becomes less competitive in terms of number of insurers and premium share. If we look at the life, Albania, Belarus, and Macedonia with more competitive markets. So we have more competitive markets because several companies entered those markets. So now the competition is higher in those markets. And a rise in market competition in the life business in Bulgaria, we observe. Also, I can share this presentation with all of you because there is much more data. If you want to take a closer look, I will share with you. Another thing is I wanted to put in relation the concentration and efficiency, whether after COVID we have improved or worse efficiency. What we can see, this shows us the market concentration, Herfindahl-Hirschman index, and this is the claim to premium ratio. What we can observe, if you go on the right, if you go from pre-COVID to post-COVID, it goes down. The claims ratio, what we observed previously. So as I said, that might be tendency that shows probably insurers become less efficient because the labor market change, the costs are increasing for insurers, especially in these markets. So maybe they have hit on the expense ratio and they want to manage with the loss ratio, to decrease the loss ratio to remain profitable. But if we look the profitability dynamics, we don't see that observation. So here we have profitability indicators like combined ratio, expense ratio, loss ratio, return on assets, and return on equity. So what we can observe, there is no problem with the expenses, at least in the post-pandemic period. We see some efficiency improvement in Croatia. So the expense ratio is going down. But for the other countries, there is no much changes. So that means the decreasing loss ratios is not because of the losses of efficiency. Probably insurers after COVID better manage the claims. So better estimate, better price, and so on and so on. The typical, the case of the Albania is interesting because if we look the profitability, we can see that in the life, inefficiency, the profitability is driven by inefficiencies. So it's higher expense ratio, it affects the profitability. But if you look at the non-life, it's because the higher loss ratio, not because of the expenses. So it's an interesting view, even though Albania has a very high combined ratio, it's caused by two different problems. One is inefficiency, the other is higher loss ratio. One point I want to make is financial inclusion and underwriting. This is part of my study that I did. What is the story behind this study is I wanted to show whether financial inclusion can help insurers, whether greater inclusion will bring loss ratios at lower levels. So better management, better diversification for insurers, and so on. So if we look on the long term, here we can see that the higher is the inclusion, approximated as account ownership, the lower is the claim to premium ratio. So greater inclusion, more efficient markets, lower loss ratios. And that is the case in more competitive markets. So the lower is the concentration, the greater will be effect if more inclusive is the market. In the end, I want to conclude by my own estimations. So I used simple model. I used the estimates of IMF to see what will happen with the growth rates in these markets on regional level. So what are the tendencies? I don't want to look also, Dorin mentioned, so we should not look in these statistics as exact statistics. I want to look at these statistics as a tendencies or as a cross-country variations. So that's why in that way I will interpret these results. So in the non-life business, I expect higher growth rates for non-EU markets. That is the general conclusion of these estimations. While in the life, I expect higher growth rates compared to the other countries for Central Eastern Europe, EU, and Southeastern Europe, non-EU. So these are the main conclusions that I have. In the life business, I expect revival because inflation settled down. So that is, I won't repeat the conclusion to save time. If you have some questions, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bojan. It is quite interesting. It's a different kind of approach comparing with what we are doing with the same data. And I just want to make a remark. We are generally speaking about the CEE, but CEE is a very complex group of countries with very big differences among them. So it's not a unitary field that you are looking at. Also, there are very big differences in sizes, which counts. For instance, you were talking about that falling trend in life insurance at some point. Yeah, it was a change in the Polish market. The local authority imposed very strict conditions for life insurance distribution and very restrictive conditions. And the life insurance market in Poland, which is more or less half of the life insurance market in the CEE, went down by, I don't know, 60 to 20% in 1 year, which was driven the entire region results. If you were excluding the Poland, then the trend was completely different. There are also big differences, which is also not easy to analyze, in the way the market authorities are reporting data. For instance, you were talking about MTPL claims decreasing in Romania. Well, they didn't decrease actually, but just a big share of them was paid by the guarantee fund following the bankruptcy. So the full figure, if you are taking into account also that data, is different. So what I want to say is that it's very important to look at these figures. It helps position yourself in the bigger landscape and maybe feel the trends, but only figures are not enough. Sometimes you need to know the facts behind them, because these differences are very important when you are looking to the big pictures. So that being said, thank you for your work. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
And I hope it gives us also the opportunity to maybe feel a little better about our own market compared to the others. I would invite you to take a seat here in the panel area, because we will continue.